Yes, we're going to the old city in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem in order to do a good old share screen. And here we go. My name is Ami Braun, born in the United States, made Ali as a little kid. I've been involved in, hold on one second, let me just pin this onto my face. And we're good. Born in the US, made Ali as a little kid. Have been involved in guiding since like I feel the dawn of time, 20 years. And I live in Jerusalem with my wife, Decline. Baby child Hallel, she might be joining us our calls from time to time. She's 3 months old. We may hear a bit in the background. All's good otherwise. Okay, let's jump in to the Jewish quarter. But here's the thing. We're starting a wonderful four-part series over here about Arbat Arei HaKodesh, the four holy cities, which are going to be Jerusalem that we're talking about today, Hebron, Tiberias, and Tzfat. We like connecting them to the four powers of the world. Jerusalem is all about the passion in the history is totally connected to fire. Hebron, the main thing about it, what turns Hebron into what it is today, and its main draw to it, of course, is Me'arat HaMachpelah, the cave of the patriarchs. So that'll be Earth, Tveria, Tiberias. So we're going to be visiting next week is next to the Sea of Galilee, next to the Kinneret. So we have our drop of water, and Tzfat, which is very spiritual, and high up is connected is connected to air. Look, a lot of times people ask, where does this idea regarding the four holy cities come from? Where does the concept come from? So actually, surprisingly, it's a little bit new. It dates back to between 300 to 400 years ago, depends which city we're talking about. And it really has to do at the end of the day with the fundraising committee, the Vada Chalukah that they connected to in order to fundraise money from outside of Israel to the Jews that are living in these cities over here. But of course, these cities, we're going to connect to them as the four holy cities because of the tremendous amount of history, Jewish history that they have in them that we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks. And let's start, of course, with Jerusalem. We're looking now, thank you to Google Earth, we're looking now at a bird's eye view of the old city of Jerusalem. And if we follow my mouse, we can sort of follow along where the walls of the old city are today. And the size of the old city of Jerusalem's Ir Hatikah today is a third of a square mile, 1 square kilometer, not very big. There's about 40,000 residents living inside of it. And when we talk in general about Jerusalem, okay, ancient Jerusalem, it's not just the Jewish quarter, which we are going to be focusing on today. I mean, we can talk about Temple Mount, Har HaBayit over here. Today we have the Aqsa Mosque and a Dome of the Rock in it, but it's the site of our two temples in the past, the two Batei Mikdash. We can even go back to earlier times, the real dawn of Jerusalem, and that'll be Ir David, the city of David. I'm talking about Jewish history and findings. City of David, which will be a little bit south of these areas over here. And of course, biblical cities like Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac, that'll take place atop Har Moriah, Mount Moriah, which is underneath the area of this golden dome, the Dome of the Rock over here in the Temple Mount. But I'm getting a little bit off topic. Let's get a little bit more on topic, and that is the Jewish quarter. We can see the area of the Jewish quarter that's inside the old city, surrounded by this red line that I created over here. And as we look at this area over here, the Jewish quarter, it's not very big, about 50 acres, 200 dunam. That is all. The history inside of it also will go back to close to 3,000 years ago. That we're going to connect and go with it all the way through until today's residents. We're going to actually meet one of them at the end of the tour. It's going to be interesting and it's going to be fun. To get a bit of a more of a look over here, closer view of the Jewish quarter and get a bit of a feel of it from the outside before we start walking around through the alleyways. This is a view of the Jewish quarter. In the middle of it, we can see the Horva Synagogue. You know, when you look from far, from an overview, and you have the tour guide that'll say, you see that building that sits out, and that building sits out over here, and that over there. So this is the building in the middle over here with the white dome called the Horva Synagogue that's going to stick out. When you stand with the tour guide from far, and he wants to show you where the Jewish quarter is, well, so you see that white building from far, the Horva, that's it. And that's the Horva that we're going to see over here. We're going to go inside of it. Actually, we're going to get to twist around inside of it later on, and we're going to hear it telling us its story. So we can start getting a little bit of the feel of the alleyways over here. We can see it's very densely packed, the homes and where everybody lives. And the feeling of walking through these alleyways and hearing the stones telling us their story, giving us this throwback feeling to hundreds of years ago is really amazing as we make our way through. And we also get a bit of a view of the main square that's in the middle of the Jewish quarter over here, the Horva Square, which is also a place of gathering today inside the Jewish quarter. The Jewish quarter today, okay, which consists of, regarding size, consists about of a fifth of the whole size of the old city, has over 4,000 Jews living inside of it today, densely packed area. And what's really cool to really think about is we're making our way through the alleyways of the Jewish quarter, is how past, present, and future all connect over here. I mean, look at this. These are homes where people live today, but they're living literally on top of or connected to the archaeology from the ancient history that we're going to be touching upon. So it's really past, present, and future coming together today. And let's now delve inside into our very first stop over here today. And this over here is going to be the first stop that we're going to be talking about today. And let's just get a bit of a feel of where we're standing inside of this particular road over here. We'll just do a twist, a turn, and we can see the alleyways and the sidewalks and where people are living over here on Tiferet Israel Street inside the Jewish quarter. And you can walk here many, many, many times and pass next to this wall over here. And you know, almost not even notice that this wall is here. But this has a heck of a story, okay? It's called the Chomah HaRechava, the Broad Wall. And in order to tell the story of the Broad Wall that we see in front of us over here, let's pop back for a minute to our PowerPoint and let's talk about the Broad Wall. We're going to jump into dramatic time that dates back to 2,700 years ago. We're going to be making about 6 stops today as we make our way through the Jewish quarter, and they're going to be chronological, dating from now, okay, this stop over here, which is middle of First Temple era, 2,700 years ago, all the way until today. What's going on right now, 2,700 years ago? So we're 300 years after King David is going to conquer Jerusalem and his son Shlomo. Solomon is going to build the first Beit Mikdash. 300 years later, we have a king whose name is Chizkiyahu. His name is Hezekiah. Hezekiah is going to decide to stop paying taxes to the big superpower that's in what we call today the Middle East. All right, and those are going to be to the Assyrians. He's not going to be he doesn't want to pay anymore to the Assyrians, and their king Sancheriv is going to come on a war journey through Israel. Hezekiah knows Sancheriv is on the way. So what does he decide to do? He's going to build a wall in order to protect the city. Now, in order to give us a bit of context as to where this all really is, because it's hard to understand from this picture over here, let's watch a short movie. We're going to come back in a minute that's created by Mechon Megalim. And the sound share is on. And if that's the case, there we go. Let's take a look at this.
Here's why.
And we see the wall being built around the city back then. And I want to stop for a minute, okay? What we see is Jerusalem 2,700 years ago. This is the area of the Temple Mount in the first temple. But we're up over here on this hill where I'm pointing to right now with my mouse. Now take a look. Where are we located right now? Okay, in our picture with the broad wall. We're located over here. This is the northern side of the city, and Hezekiah is building this wall that's running around the city in order to protect from the enemies. And in a minute, this video is going to finish building this wall. I'm going to come up right over here. This is where we're at. Please notice, if you're inside the wall, of course, you'll be on the left side. And if you're outside the wall, you're going to be in this area with trees and green on the right side. So let's just finish the video. There we go. Okay, so that's just to sort of help and give us a bit of a feel of where we're at. This wall over here, which was 7 meters wide, that's over 20 feet wide, and was 8 meters, about 25 feet high. This blue and white line over here along this building shows us till about over here how high this building really was built by Hezekiah. Now, if we're in the city, we're going to be on the left side where we see these buildings over here. For outside the city, we're going to be on the right side. Okay, I'm pointing to right now with my mouse. The drama commences when Hezekiah's army arrives outside of the wall on the right side over here. Excuse me, when Sancheriv's army, will arrive outside the wall on the right side over here. Their chief negotiator, Rav Shakeh, Sancheriv wasn't with him at that point. The chief negotiator, Rav Shakeh, is going to wait for what? For the Jewish negotiators to come out of the city and speak to him, and this they do. Rav Shakeh doesn't really want to speak to them. Who does he want to speak to? He wants to talk to the residents of Jerusalem who are standing where? Or where would you want to stand if you're inside the city and the enemy has come from outside the city? You're going to want to stand on the wall. You're going to want to see the action. They're going to be standing on the wall that's going to be up on top over here. And they're going to listen. And Rav Shakeh is going to talk in Hebrew, Yehudit. He says to them, open your walls. Look at this army all around me over here. Close to 200,000 soldiers, according to the biblical source. Open your gates. We'll take you out where we settle you, but you're going to be okay. He says, your God himself sent me to come and conquer the city. The negotiators, the Jewish negotiators will come back into the city. They're going to come tell Hezekiah, listen, this is what's going on outside the city. This is the big army that's outside the city. What do we do? Hezekiah is going to turn to the Navi, the prophet of that time, to Yeshayahu, to Isaiah, and Isaiah is going to say to him, do not worry. The way that they have come, so they shall go. Don't worry. That night, residents of Jerusalem will go to sleep, or not so sure I'd be able to fall asleep with the massive army that wants to conquer me outside the walls. But when they wake up in the morning, they stand on the wall and they look out, and what do they see beyond the wall on the right side over here? The answer to that question we'll see in the book of Isaiah, where it says, that night an angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 in the Assyrian camp, and the following morning they were all dead corpses, and the city was saved. Now, that's the biblical source, the biblical text. Let's see what Sancheriv is going to say happens over here, because Sancheriv, the Assyrian king, is going to actually write three prisms, three accountings, if you want to call that, history books from that time, where he describes what goes on. And he gives a description of his war journey where he conquers 46 different towns. There's names of these towns that he conquers. One of them is Lachish, that we can actually visit today. It's about an hour drive out of Jerusalem. And what is he going to say though about Jerusalem? Unlike all the other cities that he describes that he destroyed, he does not say that about Jerusalem, but the royal ego will also not allow him to admit defeat. So he says like this, as for Hezekiah, I shut him like a caged bird in its royal city of Jerusalem. And this is going to lead to conversation. A conversation with who? A conversation with none other than Isaiah himself. Isaiah's going to read the newspaper in the morning. He's going to know what Sancheriv is saying. And he's going to say, no, you did not trap him. As it says in the book of Isaiah, on the left side in the section I just added right now, he'll say, like the birds that fly, even so will the Lord of hosts shield Jerusalem, shielding and saving, protecting and rescuing. This is a conversation between Isaiah, the prophet, Yeshayahu, and between Sancheriv. So what we're going to do now is we said we're going to go chronological. We're going to continue walking, along now, and we're going to make our way through some of the alleyways of the Jewish quarter, and we're going to jump forward. Oh, before that, I almost forgot. Time out. One of the really cool things to see and to point out are the modern day digs that took place in Jerusalem, because we have this text, all right, of the Tanakh describing the story that we just said. We have Sancheriv's prism, but where's this wall? Bring along archaeologist and Professor Nachman Avigad. He is in charge of the dig in the Jewish quarter for about 10 years, from 1969 through the late 1970s. And at the very beginning of the dig, 1969, 1970, they start discovering what we know today is the Broad Wall. Today we walk by the Broad Wall. Every tour guide explains what I just explained a minute ago. But when they find this wall, or they start finding this wall that was covered up in 1969, 1970, they still didn't know that that's the wall that we're talking about today. Nachman Avigad had a feeling, but he had to prove it. And it's after spending a year digging over there, they come to the conclusion that it's what we know today is the Broad Wall, this first temple era wall dating back to 2,700 years ago. But look at it, this bird's eye view dating back to the time when he discovers it in 1970. You can see this is the Jewish quarter, okay? Here's the Dome of the Rock over here. And all this today is, of course, covered with homes. You have to walk in between the homes to actually get to the Broad Wall. And here everything is cleared out. The Jewish quarter was a massive site for archaeological excavations going on at that time. And it's really cool to see this discovery over here. Going back just for a minute to the digs in the Jewish quarter that really started in 69, go through the 1970s and into the 1980s. And we're going to meet Nachman Avigad also another time. but we said we're walking through the alleyways, and we're going to now jump forward several hundred years from First Temple era, 2,700 years ago. The first temple will be destroyed and then be rebuilt. This will be the second temple. The second temple will stand for about 600 years. And in essence, we've now jumped from 2,700 years ago to 2,000 years ago, to the first century before the Common Era and the first century of the Common Era. What are we looking at right now, and where have we entered? We've now entered a site called the Herodian Quarter, that if you know the Jewish quarter a little bit, it's underneath Yeshivat HaKotel, and we're entering some of the fanciest homes that you're going to see from that era in Jerusalem. I'm going to host you. So come with me into this home over here, and as we're entering inside, we're coming up to this room that's right in front of us with this mosaic, which is actually the area of the basement. It's not even the living room. And we can see this beautiful mosaic over here. And if we're talking about 2,000 years ago and a Second Temple era, Tum'ain Tahara, purity and impurity, and mikvaot, ritual baths, have become a very central part of life. And what we're going to do is we're going to dip our feet inside of this little square with the circle inside of it over here to clean our feet. And then we're going to walk down these steps to the mikvah, to the ritual bath. We'll come back out. We'll step on the mosaic over here, which is a rough floor so that we don't slip. We can take a look and back over here if we want to go into bathtub. Definitely doable in this very fancy home. Maybe you want to get a good bottle of wine. We can go into the basement of the home right over here that's underneath this arch over here. Take out a good bottle of wine over here. Why am I pointing this out? And we can also, of course, also see in the bottom left corner the very beautiful dishes that were found in this complex of several homes, that this is just one of them that was found in the Herodian, what we know today is the Herodian Quarter today. Why am I telling you all this? Because I'm trying to take us into the feeling and the era of what's going on during the first century before the Common Era and the time of the first century. What we see over here today are some of the very wealthy aristocratic Jews, most probably Kohanim, okay, at that time. And if they're very wealthy and very well off, this can also start showing some of the gaps in the socioeconomic levels that were going on at the time that were creating a tremendous amount of tensions within Jewish society at that time. Not everybody lived like this at all. So there's some wealth and also many Jews that are looking at this, and it also creates a lot of antagonism and anger. In addition to that, Jewish society at that time is being ripped apart by different sects. We have the Pharisees, those are Chazal, the Chachamim, the sages, that really at the end of the day have continued into what is is evolved into what Judaism is today. If that's the Pharisees, the Pushim, we also have the Sadducees, we have the Tzdukim. The Tzdukim are the more aristocratic priests, Kohanim, society and people of that time. And without getting into too many details about these sects, there's a tremendous tension between the two. And then when you throw nationalism into there, with the zealots and the Sikari that really see religious freedom at the time, and you know what we call today we'll call nationalism as the ultimate goal and the only way to go about things, and not willing to be under the boot of Roman rule. They were the ones that were over here at the time. You'll have a tremendous amount of inner turmoil. You'll have a tremendous amount of turmoil also against the Romans and fighting against them. That'll eventually lead also the Jews fighting, these sects fighting against themselves within Jerusalem, and the Roman army arriving outside of Jerusalem in order to conquer a city. The Romans had already been here before this for over 100 years, but the Jews had rebelled against them, had thrown them out of Jerusalem, and now they've come back to conquer a city of Jerusalem, that the Jews are not only fighting the Romans, but they're fighting one another. And amongst the different things that this is going to lead to at the time in Jerusalem is starvation. And if we meet a lady by the name of Malta Bat Baitus from the Talmud, Tractate Gittin, who is a very wealthy lady, it makes sense she'll be living in the complex of homes that we're looking at one of them over here. The story from the Talmud can describe a little bit of what's going on in the streets of Jerusalem as the Romans are laying siege on the city in the years 66 to 70 of the Common Era. It goes like this. You're welcome to read with me also from home. It says, with regard to this famine, it is related that Malta Bat Baitos was one of the wealthy women of Jerusalem. He said, welcome to these homes. Here you go. She went out, she sent out her agent and said to him, go bring me fine flowers. The whole conversation coming up now. She's going to send her servant, out to the market to get food for her. He's going to go out. She's sending him out to get what? Best food, the fine flour. But by the time he went, if we continue reading, the fine flour was already sold. He comes back to his sister, there's no fine flour, but there's ordinary flour. No problem, she says to them, go then and bring me ordinary flour. Comes back and he says to her, there is no more, but there is coarse flour. This goes back and forth, back and forth. No coarse flour. She says, get me barley flour. He comes back, there's no more barley flour. At the end of the day, Malta Babaitus herself ends up dying from that at the end of the story. And I'm not going to get into all the details of the story right now, but the idea is that the city is starving. And if we continue walking around inside what's known as the Herodian quarters and these underground homes, today we're going to see some of the other things that will bring to life the Jerusalem of the years 66 to 70 of the Common Era, of the years of the Great Rebellion against the Romans and Jerusalem's destruction in the months of Av and Elul, August, September of the year 70 of the Common Era. The Romans are going to come to these homes and in Jerusalem in general, and they are going to burn them. We can see amongst this complex of homes in the Herodian Quarter, we can see this wall over here. Look at the beautiful fresco, the colors. It's gorgeous. But look what there's also on these frescoes, what we have, and that's this black soot over here from the burning that went on at the time. We can see wooden log in the top right corner over here, which was burnt. We see these ashes over here today, and we can even meet a family talking about bringing that era to life. We can see the stone over here. This is a weight stone, and on it says in Hebrew that we can read Beit Katros. Okay, this is the house of the Katros family. They were one of the wealthy families of Kohanim at Jerusalem at the time. And as the Romans are going to come in and destroy the Second Temple and make their way a few weeks up later to what we know today is the Jewish Quarter, back then it was known as the Upper City, the Jews are going to go into the drainage systems and hide there, and they're going to run away. And we can literally see ripped up drainage systems in the archaeological findings in the old city, like we can see in the middle of this picture right over here, a ripped up drainage system. And Josephus Flavius, the Jewish historian who was alive at that time, is going to describe how the Jews will be hiding inside. And if we go to the middle of the area that I have made sort of like given this golden yellowish color, we can see about the Romans, or the Jews, how the Jews are in the tunnels and the Romans were tearing up the ground, and they'll kill the Jews that are inside the tunnels over here. We can even see on the bottom left corner over here, we can see a spear, original from that time, that was used in the battles against coins that were found in the Jewish quarter, in general around Jerusalem and all of Israel, but this is a specific coin that was found in Jerusalem, in the area of the Jewish quarter, and these are what's called the coins of the rebellion. In ancient Hebrew, on the coin on the left side over here, it says Machatzita shekel, the half a shekel. On the right side, it says Yerushalayim HaKdosha, Holy Jerusalem. And what also does it say? It'll say on the coin on the left side, in the middle, it'll say in ancient Hebrew letters, Shin Bet, Shana Bet, year 2, meaning the year 67 of the Common Era, year 2 of the rebellion against the Romans, or year 2 of our independence, the redemption of Jerusalem. When excavations are going on from 1969, 1970, we can get a picture that was taken by Nachman Avigad of the homes that we were inside right now that today are underneath new buildings that were built in the Jewish quarter. But in 1969, 1970, the Jewish quarter was all being rebuilt once again, almost from scratch. And the archaeological excavations that are going on over here exposed to all, we can see the mosaic floors over here in the middle. This is where we were a minute ago. Today, on top of all of this archaeology, we have, like I mentioned before, we have a huge building called Yeshivat HaKotel. And Nachman Avigad is going to write in his book, Discovering Jerusalem, the feeling of the people as they were coming to here and finding our history in the Jewish quarter from 2,000 years ago. And he's going to write, I'm quoting from over here, regarding what they found and connecting to 2,000 years ago, the traces of what happened when this was all destroyed 2,000 years ago, the traces were so vivid that one could almost feel the heat and the smell of the fire, the latent sentiment released by the people who were digging there, by people normally quite composed and immune to showing their emotions, was unbelievable. What we're going to do, though, now is we are going to jump out from over here, and we are now going to jump forward from the time of the destruction 2,000 years ago to about 1,500 years ago. What are we going to do 1,500 years ago? We're going to go first of all to Google Earth because it's going to help us a lot over here. And now we're going to go visit the Cardo. Look, the Romans are going to remain in Jerusalem for a long time. They're going to come in the 1st century before the Common Era, and they're going to remain over here in Jerusalem for the next 700 years until the 7th century. And they're going to build Jerusalem up over the centuries after the destruction of the Second Temple, like a Roman city. One of the generic things that you're going to build in a city that has it's Roman style, is going to be a cardo. Okay, cardo means the main artery that's running through the city that's going to be going from north to south. And that's what we're looking at over here. We can see the cardo, the main road from 1,500 years ago. We can see the columns with the Corinthian tops on top of them over here. And to get a bit of feel of where we're standing inside the Jewish quarter, let's turn around. This is a archaeological finding called tourists, which used to come to here, BC, before COVID. Got to be a little bit humorous about the situation that we're in. You'll excuse me. And we're going to twist and turn. And here we can just really get the feel of where we're at inside the Jewish quarter right now, overlooking the Cardo. And what I want to do is I want to welcome you into the Cardo with a short video. And after that, we'll talk about the Cardo a little bit more. So here we go. I'm now standing inside the Cardo in the old city, the Jewish quarter. I'm standing actually in a 1,500-year-old street that would cut through the city. Now over here we can see the curb, the sidewalk, the beautiful columns with the Corinthian column tops that held the roof above our heads, so that whoever came to shop till you drop in the stores over here would have a pleasant experience. We're waiting for you to come shopping over here. Always fun to go. Always fun to go shopping in the Cardo. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Cardo. The Cardo, technically, what are we looking at? What we're looking at is this main road, the Roman Cardo, that's going from north to south. The right side of our screen is the north, the left side of our screen is to the south. Just like when you're driving through a street today, you're gonna have the street, you're gonna have the curb, you're gonna have the sidewalk, and then you're gonna have the stores. So if we look down below over here, we can see, if you're following my mouse, running through sort of the left bottom corner area of our screen, we can see the street in the Cardo. That's not where you're going to want to stand, because that's where you're going to have the horses and the donkeys and the camels. But then we have the curb running along over here right underneath the columns. And then we'll step up onto the curb, and we're going to be in the middle of our screen over here. We can see the sidewalk, and that's where we're going to be walking. Now, these columns that we have a good view of right now with the Corinthian column tops on top are going to just run all along the edge of the sidewalk over here. And on top of that, we're going to have a roof. If you've visited Israel in the past in this hot summer months, you want a roof over your head. If you visited in Israel in the winter and it's raining, it's cold and wet, you want a roof over your head. And you're going to come up to the stores that are going to be built up within the bedrock over here on the side. We can see a couple of the stores over here on the left side, where I'm showing you, pointing to right now with my mouse. And over here, we'll do our shopping. Now, here's the thing. The Romans came out with an edict and they told the Jews, you are not allowed into Jerusalem. The Jews rebelled against the Romans time and time again. We have the main rebellions that we may have heard about. So rebellion I just spoke about, the Great Rebellion that led to the destruction of the Second Temple in the 1st century. 6 years later, we're going to have another huge rebellion called the Bar Kokhba Rebellion that'll take place, if not necessarily in Jerusalem, but in the area of Judea. And the Romans, to try and take the wind out of the sails of the Jews, say to them, you can't come to Jerusalem anymore. And it was like that until the Muslim conquest in the 7th century. So for walking around over here, the Cardo was built in different eras, and I'll get into that in a minute, but be it 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, in this particular area of the Cardo, it's really from the 6th century. You're going to see lots of different people from different backgrounds, but not Jews, besides one day a year. And that is going to be on Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av. That's the day of the destruction of the temples. And at that point, Jews are going to be allowed to come into Jerusalem in order to mourn the destruction of the temple. as the Bordeaux pilgrim will describe in the 4th century. He's going to write, Jews came to CERN perforated stone once a year, lament with wailing and tear their clothing. Perforated stone is going to be up on the Temple Mount, maybe the foundation stone, which was inside the Holy of Holies in the temple. But this is when they come. This is the only day that they can come, dressed in a way that they're mourning over the destruction of Jerusalem. But we can see this coin over here on the left side that was minted by the Romans when the Second Temple was destroyed. And what does it say? It says in Latin, Judea capta. Judea has been conquered, and meaning by the Romans. We can see the palm trees with the dates were so prevalent at the time, and we can see the Roman conqueror on the left side over here, and on the right side we can see this Jewish humiliated woman over here that has been conquered by the Romans. And as I like to say when I'm standing always in the Cardo, but here we are today in the modern state of Israel today, and walking around over here, and we can see whoever wants to walk over here, part of the Jewish quarter, Jews and everybody else walking over here today, which is wonderful. But when you think back about the history, it gives a bit of an emphasis, in my opinion, of where we're able to come to and see today. Again, going back to Nachman Avigad, excavating over here in the Cardo, he gets to this part in the late 1970s. And how does Nachman Avigad know where to come to? How does he know where the Cardo is if the Cardo is actually covered up throughout all these centuries? Where people are walking today, that's more or less the level of where you walked, okay, until the Cardo was excavated from the late 1970s through the 1980s, covered up. Nachman Avigad needs to know where to dig. How does he know where to dig? The answer is going to be in this map over here, the Meidba map. The Meidba map is a map not just of Israel, but of the whole general area that was found in 1884 in the basement of a church in Meidba, Jordan, still over there today. And today, inside the Jewish quarter, we can actually see a replica of it inside the Cardo. And it's a description of 6th century Jerusalem, meaning Jerusalem in Roman Byzantine era, 500 years ago. And let's take a look at this map for a moment. What we can see is like this. And we can see the walls running around Jerusalem of 1,500 years ago. And we can see this gate on the left side. Today it's Damascus Gate. When we come in the gate, we can see two Cardos. We have the Cardo Minor and the Cardo Maximus. Let's walk across the Cardo Maximus smack through the middle. And as we're making our way through, we can see these columns that we're going to be visiting along the way. We're going to visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre over here. And then the Cardo is going to continue. If we get to the end, we get to the Maya Church over here at the edge on one side, the Hagia Zion Church on the other side. Why am I pointing this out? First of all, people who create maps, they give their narrative and they'll put into the maps what's important to them. This map was created by Byzantines, meaning Roman Christians at the time, and they're going to emphasize, of course, the churches. The Cardo was created to connect at the end of the day from this entrance over here all the way through to the Church of Holy Sepulchre and to the churches on the southern end over here, depending when, what, and where the Cardo was built. That's a whole story of itself I'm not getting into. But Nachman Avigad looks at this and he says, oh, thanks to this map, I know where to dig to be able to find the Cardo today. If we look at the map, where were we standing a moment ago? We're standing about over here, already close to the southern end. We can see these columns on one side, on the other side. By the way, the reddish color, pinkish reddish color we see on both sides, this is the roof, okay? On top of the columns, this is what's called 3D, 3 dimensions in mosaic dating back to ancient times. What I want to do now, though, is let's jump forward. And we're going to now jump forward from about 1,500 years ago, a big leap, to over 1,000 years ago, to the Middle Ages, towards the end of the Middle Ages, into the Turkish era, 17th, 18th, 19th century. In order to do that, we are going to go visit a home. I want to jump forward for a second, past this room. Let's take a look at it on the outside. We're going to all come back to this in a minute. We're now going to go to an address in the Jewish quarter that's called Or HaChaim Street, number 6. Because what we've done is we've jumped now forward from 1,500 years ago, Byzantine era. We're now jumping forward to the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th century. And why to this home? because in this home, when we go inside, there was continuous Jewish residents, Jewish families living over here for about 500 years. From the time that the Jewish quarter of today, as we know it, was settled in its present place area today in the 15th century, 600 years ago, residents all the way through until today. This is what the home looks like from outside. Let us now go inside. In order to go inside, we're going to reverse these pictures that we're going to get back to in a minute. And we're now actually inside a museum called the Old Yeshu Court Museum. Living in Jerusalem at that time is very, very difficult. And I forgot to mention, and I should mention this, if I was saying that in the Byzantine era, there were really no Jews in Jerusalem from after the destruction of the Second Temple. There's going to be on again, off again Jewish presence from after Byzantine era, meaning from the early Muslim era in the 7th century, 1300 years ago, on and off, on and off. And now we're going to jump forward to the 15th century, about 600 years ago. And from then, even a little earlier, but I don't want to get into too much of the details, but it's from then there will be continuous Jewish presence, okay, in Jerusalem all the way through until 1948 in the Independence War. And specifically now, I'm talking about the era of the Jewish quarter as we know it today. And if a lot of times we talk about history in the macro, let's go into the micro. Let's join a Jewish family right now in their home sometime in the 16, 17, 18, and even 1900s. And we're going to come into a very, very modest room over here. Families, okay, living in Jerusalem, the Jewish families living in the Jewish quarter at that time, they're going to usually be renting, usually not going to own their apartment, and they're going to actually have a room, not quite an apartment. You're going to rent out a room, usually from the Muslim owner, for a year at a time. You'll pay a year in advance, okay? And then after 11 months, usually, more often than not, the owner is going to find somebody else who's willing to pay more, and you're going to have to move. Meaning you're going to move around about once a year, unless you're a family that's well off and you can pay 3 years in advance. So we're in this house, and usually what you do, actually, you wouldn't sleep on the bed like we can see in front of us over here. We're going to get to the straightest bed in a minute, but usually you're going to open up mattresses and mats at night. That's where you're going to sleep on at night. You'll wake up in the morning, you'll roll up your mat or your mattress, you'll sit on the floor, you're going to eat the simple food that you're going to eat at that time. And if we're talking about hygiene, I'll say oy, oy, oy. Because hygiene is, look, you have water cisterns, you have running water, and the water cisterns also a lot of times connected with the sewage over there, which created plagues. A lot of times, if you were lucky, you take a bath once a week. And if we'll walk out from the room into this picture that we can see in the bottom right corner over here, we're going to go into the courtyard that's in between some of the apartments over here. And over there, you're going to have the hole that's the toilet. And then when it overflows, you're going to have someone that will come and take everything out, put it on his donkey, and lead it out of the city. You get a bit of a feel and the sense of it's not the most pleasant and the most comfortable over here. And then we can talk a little bit about childbirth, which is a bit of the story of this room that we see in front of us over here. If you had enough money, you could rent a bed, like this bed over here, so that your wife could give birth on this bed over here. And there were a lot of beliefs in, evil eye and warding off the evil eye at the time, which is why we can see this eye over here that's underneath this bed to ward off the evil eye when you're in childbirth, that everything should go well. Lighting, we can see the candles on the left side over here, lighting candles with olive oil over here, and having these candles also ward off the evil eye. These are a lot of these different beliefs that people believed in at that time. And we can go back out to the courtyard over here. And at the end of the day, the courtyard, it's in the bottom right corner. This was the social meeting for everybody at the time. That's where you'd sit. That's where you'd cook. That's where you would, wash your clothes. We can see it's sort of like this grate that's on the left side over here, where you're going to grate away at your clothes over here and use it as a washing machine. So a little bit about the families in the Old Yeshu Court Museum. You may have visited the Jewish Quarter many times before, and you might be saying, I never knew about this museum. And it is off the beaten track a little bit, but definitely worth a visit next time you come to the Jewish Quarter. And if we're now talking about this era of what's known as the era of the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire, 16, 17, 18, 1900s, and we spoke about the micro, let's go back out to the macro, let's go back out to to the general story, and let's go visit the Horva Synagogue right now. And to get a bit of a feel of the Horva Synagogue, let's go back to Google Earth, and let's go hop over to the Horva Synagogue right outside of it, just to get a feel as if we're standing outside the synagogue. And we've landed on it. And here's the Horva Synagogue as we know it today. And let's twist and turn. We see the main square inside the Jewish quarter right now. And we're going to continue turning it over here. And then as we finish, continue turning around. By the way, the Cardo is right beyond this palm tree that's in front of us. We continue back to the Horva Synagogue right over here. And now that we got a bit of a feel for the Horva Synagogue, let's go back to our PowerPoint and tell its story. The Horva Synagogue, first of all, the name Horva is a very strange name for a synagogue, because Horva means destruction. You think about the synagogues that you know, you visit or you don't visit or whatnot, there's nice names in memory of people or something positive. Why is a synagogue going to be called the ruins, the Horva Synagogue? To answer that question, we have to talk about the few versions that it went through. I like talking about version 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. But to get to version 1.0, let's go back in time to 300 years ago. Okay, we're now talking about the year 1700. And as I like to say when I'm standing outside the synagogue, when you woke up this morning, did you open up the newspaper and see the headlines? You would see there's a group of 300 Jews led by a man whose name is Yehuda HaChasid, making their way to Jerusalem. And they're going to be coming through your town and your friends' towns and everyone's towns. It's a huge deal coming back then to Israel. It's not like today you can pop onto a plane and come to Israel. It's not something that's very commonplace. And people promise donations and to invest and help them in their community when they arrive in Jerusalem and help them with their synagogue they're going to have over here. The problem is when they arrive, 5 days after they arrive, Yehuda HaChasid is going to die. And with that, all of the promises for donations are going to fall through. And these Ashkenazi Jews are going to turn to the Muslims and borrow money from them in order to build a synagogue. Things like this, when you borrow money, you usually need to pay it back. They didn't have money to pay back. By 20 years later, in 1721, the Muslims are going to come and they are going to destroy the synagogue. That's version 1.0. And it'll take 150 years almost until the loan will be returned to the Muslims. And in 1864, meaning roughly 150 years ago, 160 years ago, the synagogue is going to be built. And this is Horva Synagogue version 2.0. And the name Horva is from already then going to stick, even though it's going to be called Beit Knesset Beit Yaakov, named after James Rothschild, who donates some money to build it. What's going to stick is the Horva, the ruined synagogue, because it was ruined, its original ruin. And the Horva Synagogue becomes one of the main synagogues, not the only one, but one of the main synagogues in the Jewish quarter. It's going to have a lot of prominent visitors throughout the years. And one of these visitors is going to come along in 1920. And now we're going to enter the time of the British Mandate. They're going to arrive, World War I, 1917. In 1920, they're going to send their High Commissioner, whose name is Herbert Samuel, who is Jewish. A lot of excitement. And Herbert Samuel is going to come in 1920 on his first Shabbat in Jerusalem, and he's going to visit the synagogue, and he knows how to read Hebrew. He's going to read the Haftarah. Okay, and as he's reading the Haftarah, he's going to say the bracha, the blessing you say afterwards, in which he says, Al kis'o lo yeshev zar. On his seat, a stranger shall not sit. Rabbi Cook, chief rabbi of Israel at the time, is going to stand up. He's going to stop Herbert Samuel. There's a hush. And the place is packed, full. And Rabbi Cook is going to repeat that and say, Al kis'o lo yeshev zar. On his seat, a stranger shall not sit. We might be excited that you, the British, over here, and Herbert Samuel, a Jewish High Commissioner, is over here. But at the end of the day, the British, are still strangers over here. What'll happen is unfortunately, in 1948, in the Independence War, the Horva Synagogue is going to be destroyed. It's going to be blown up by the Jordanian Legion. And it'll only be many years later, about a dozen years ago, that version 3.0, the synagogue that we see today, is built. Same blueprints from version 2.0, but this is the modern synagogue that we see today. And to get a bit of a feel of what the synagogue looks like inside, here we go. We get this feel. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. We can see the Aron Kodesh in the front. We can see the beam in the middle where people sit. We can take a look on top and just see the beauty synagogue and the pictures in the corners over here. Again, replica of what was, okay, in version 2.0 of the synagogue. And let's make our way out. And what we're going to do now is we're going to now go forward to 1948 to the Independence War. Anyway, when we're arriving in 1948, the Independence War has already commenced. And as the Independence War is being fought, there's already fighting going on in Jerusalem and in the Old City, but the British are still here. Until May the 13th, 1948, when it's 6 p.m. on this Thursday evening, the top British officer in Jerusalem is going to come to the home. This is the same home we visited a moment ago. And in it today will be living Rabbi Avraham Mordechai Weingarten, the Mukhtar, the leader of the Jewish civilian issues that were going on at the time in the Old City of Jerusalem. And he's going to, it's quite a dramatic moment. I wish I was a fly on the wall at the time. He gives him, this British officer will give Rabbi Weingarten the keys to Jerusalem, symbolic keys to Jerusalem sanctum from the year 70 of the Common Era. We just visited a few minutes ago. From the year 70 of the Common Era, when the Second Temple was destroyed, until today, the keys of the gates of Jerusalem have never been handed to the Jews. This is the first time in over 1,800 years that you have the privilege, the zchut, the privilege to receive these keys. The British will leave, and the independence war that was already being fought is going to really take on another phase, especially because the Jordanian Legion is going to now come in to the Old City, and they're going to be fighting against Jewish fighters, that are going to be in Jerusalem at that time. The explosion, the blowing up of the Horva Synagogue, as we can see in the bottom right corner over here, was a key event that took place during the fighting, because the most heavy fighting in the Old City between members of the Jewish fighters, members of the Haganah and the Irgun, against the Arab irregulars and some of the local Arabs and the Jordanians, is going to be over a 10-day period from May 18th to 28th, 1948. And on May 27th, on the second to last day of the fighting, the Jordanians are going to blow up the synagogue over here, and that really is spelling the end of the battles over here. But before we get to the site of where the battles ended, I want to stop for a minute and take a look at a memorial that's in the Jewish Quarter. It's amongst the alleyways over here around the corner of our last stop that we're going to get to in another moment. And the story of the memorial is as follows. During these last 10 days of fighting, the fateful 10 days in May of 1948, there are going to be 48 Jews who are going to be killed in the fighting over here in the Independence War. And you can't take them and bury them outside the city. You don't bury inside the walls of the Old City, ever. But the Jews were under siege in the Jewish Quarter. No one could come in, no one could come out. So they all bury them in one spot that's over here. In this memorial spot in the Jewish Quarter, they're going to bury them underneath. And one of the names over here that's actually on this side, on the right side, we can't really see it, but it's over here, is of a young boy by the name of Nisim Gini. He was 10 years old, and he is the youngest casualty of all of Israel's casualties in the wars that are considered to be soldiers. He was given status of a soldier, Nisim Gini. He was a runner between the posts, and he was making his way to one of the posts to give information or ammunition to one of the soldiers who was fighting, and he was killed along the way. So Nisim Gini is here, along with the other 47 who will be buried over here. Now, they're going to remain there for the 19 years that the Jewish Quarter is going to fall into the hands of the Jordanians until the Six-Day War will take place in 1967, Jerusalem united. We come back to the Jewish Quarter. At that point, 48 who are buried underneath will be dug out, and they're going to be buried atop Har HaZeitim, the Mount of Olives that is overlooking the Old City that they were fighting for. And on their grave, in my opinion, is a very powerful pasuk, powerful passage from the book of Isaiah that says the following. And again, I'm reminding you, where they're buried is overlooking the Old City that they had been fighting for. And it says, "You shall see, and your heart shall rejoice, your limbs shall flourish." Very powerful and very meaningful. And now what I want to do is I want to take you to Kikar Batei Machaseh, and that's going to be our last stop. In order to do that, we're going to use Google Earth. That's going to take us for a ride, and we landed safely. Here we are. Okay, we're now standing in the last stop that we're going to be making today. this large square over here called Kikar Batei Machase. As we're twisting and turning around, we see residence homes over here. As we continue twisting and turning, we're going to see this school that's right in front of us. I'm pointing this out because this structure was built in 1862, about 160 years ago. And I'll get to why I'm saying that in a minute, along also with this building over here, which is called Beit Rothschild, the Rothschild home that was built in 1871. 150, 160 years ago, this building and this building over here are part of a big project. What's the project? Remember we mentioned a moment ago the very difficult living conditions of the Jewish residents of the Jewish quarter. Time has come to finally buy land, all right, and build homes where people can live a little bit more leisurely. And there are actually 150 apartments that are going to be built over here. These are just two of the original buildings that are built that were built at the time. The rest don't necessarily exist anymore. And you could come and live over here for up to 3 years for free. And they had a whole way of deciding who was going to live over there. But this was the beginning of change in the Jewish quarter at that time. In the Erev Kikar Batei Machase today, this is a school in front of us over here. This building, the building on the right over here, is going to be a combination of a yeshiva and what's called the Merkaz Pituach Horva, the Shikum Pituach Horva, sort of like the government body that's in charge of rebuilding and advancing the Jewish quarter of today. In order to go back to the drama of it'll take place in Kikar Batei Machase during the Independence War. Let's jump to May the 20th, 1948, the day after the fall of the Horva Synagogue that we spoke about a moment ago. And at that point, Jewish leadership basically comes up with the white flag to the Jordanians and to their general Abdallah Tal and say, we're giving up to you. And they're going to gather together inside the square, and we can see the square today, okay? And we can see this picture of the square on the top left corner over here. This is actually a Jordanian soldier over here. And here are the Jews that are actually getting ready, some of them to leave the city, some of them to be taken as prisoners. And at that point, we're going to have 200 men standing in front of the Jordanian Legion at Kikar Batei Machase. And basically, Abdallah Tal says, look, I'm taking all of you, whether you're soldiers, your kids, your residents, all the men over here, I'm taking as prisoners in Jordan. They're going to be brought back to Israel, prisoners swap 10 months later. And the rest of the residents that were in the Jewish quarter at the time, that numbered about 1,600, were sent out of Shout Zion Zion's Gate to the western side of Jerusalem, if you want to call it the Jewish side of Jerusalem, that's outside the old city. And what will happen is after the old city basically gives up to the Jordanians are going to say, look, whoever, and not the men, everybody else that is not prisoners, that can leave the city, have 2 hours to go home, take one suitcase and leave. And think for a minute, imagine to yourself, if you're told you have 2 hours to leave your home and you can only take one suitcase, what are you going to put into that suitcase? Imagine you're also a family with many kids a lot of times. These are ultra-Orthodox families with many kids, and you also have your kids in your arms. Difficult. That's a picture on the left side, and the picture on the right side is a picture of the Jewish quarter after the Jews have left, and basically the homes are going to be ransacked. But all hope is not lost and never lost, and we can see this always yearning and hope and belief for better future with the Pasuk passage from the book of Zechariah, prophet who lives at the end of First Temple era, who sees the destruction of Jerusalem during First Temple era 2,500 years, 2,600 years ago. And they'll also connect to the destruction in 1948, and the hope always that we're going to come back to over here. Because what does it say? It says, and I'll read straight from the English, but if you read Hebrew, you can read the Hebrew that's etched into the wall over here on the side of Kikar Batei Machase. It says like this: thus said the Lord of hosts, there shall yet be old men and women in the squares of Jerusalem, each with staff in hand because of their great age. And the squares of the city shall be crowded with boys and girls playing in their squares. Great to see this picture with these kids playing over here, always from the schools that are in the area. We see Jerusalem today growing and flourishing and teeming with visitors, of people living over there. It's wonderful. And that'll lead us to meet David Solomon, who's a resident of the Jewish quarter, a friend of mine and a colleague, also a tour guide, who's been living there, you'll hear, for almost 40 years. And he'll be talking about life today as resident of the Jewish quarter.
So my name is David Solomon. I have the merit, the luck, the honor, the privilege, the pleasure to be living here in the Jewish quarter of Yerushalayim 37 years. I fell in love with this place the first time I saw it. It wasn't finished being rebuilt yet, but I was just taken by it, captivated. I just, wanted her. I couldn't get enough. I kept coming back, and it's different living inside walls than living anywhere else in the world, as I'm sure you can imagine. And it's even very different living in the holy city of Yerushalayim on top of history. For all of us who live here, it's very special. I mean, I don't need to tell you. You sense that you are living directly where everything that happened to our people happened, And the fact that as you walk from your home to the Makolet, you pass the ruins, of the Roman era or the time of the Assyrian revolt and siege on Yerushalayim, and you look at their remnants and they're long gone, but we're still here. It, I don't know, it affects your day-to-day existence, knowing that, Am Yisrael Chai, and we're here and we're back. And although, we were kicked out and there was that horrible 19-year period when the old city was Judenrein and Jews weren't allowed to live in the old city at all, we're back. We're back as we should be. And we, those who have risen up in the past to try and keep us from being here or take it for themselves are gone. And the Jew, we're still here. We were there then, we're here now. It's special. It's special. Shabbos. When I take people around, I show them, it's like you live and breathe. It's a 5 sense experience, because the Chagim and Shabbat, you smell it in the air. Never mind the taste. Already Thursday afternoon and Thursday night and Friday, you walk the streets and alleyways, you can smell Shabbos coming, and you can, the rush on Fridays, everybody's getting ready, and Friday night when you come back and you hear the Shalom Aleichem from your neighbor next door, and Pesach Seder, when we open our doors for the Eliyahu Navi, we see everybody else on the street doing the same thing. It's really very special. It's really, really very special. My own story is special, and I didn't realize it at the time. I fell in love with the quarter, and I kept coming back, and I kept coming back, and every time I visited, this is where I'd come. After I'd moved here, and I'd already been living here a little while, I discovered what I never knew, and that was that my grandfather was actually born in the old city of Jerusalem, under Turkish rule. I never knew that. I said, Papi, nobody knew. He said, everyone knows. I said, Papi, nobody knows. I found out where he lives, with the house that he was born in. So here I am living 300 meters from where my grandfather was born. All my children were named in the synagogue, in the shul, the chutzner where he was born. And, it's definitely a dream come true. It's not for everybody, life in the Jewish quarter. I'm grateful that it's for us, and it has been.
Thank you, David. We're celebrating his daughter's wedding right now, so you'll be watching a recording of this later. I want to thank you very much for joining. In a minute, we're going to open up to questions. But beforehand, if for whatever reason you don't have the opportunity for me to answer your question to get asked, or you have another question, anyway, you are more than welcome to contact me. This is my email, amibraun@gmail.com. Yes, I love American sports, big baseball fan. But amibraun@gmail.com, more than welcome to be in touch with me about anything and everything. And with that, I am going to stop share and open up to questions.
Thank you, Ami. That was wonderful as usual. There are plenty of comments and questions, so we'll try and answer a few as we go along. So Sherry asked before if there's a women's section in the Horva Synagogue.
Yeah, upstairs there's a women's section in the Horva Synagogue. When I guide over there, usually we go up to there and we explain from over there from on top. It's like the second level with an overview to down below. Yes, the answer is absolutely.
Debbie's asking how much of Jerusalem, I think the question is how much of the old city of Jerusalem is Jewish now?
Yeah, I actually saw that question pop up too. The old city is like this. In Jerusalem today, there's about roughly, okay, the numbers are rough, about 40,000 people in general living in the old city today. About 5,000 of them are Jews, most of them living in the Jewish quarter and a little bit also in the Muslim and Christian quarters. But out of 40,000 people in the old city, about 5,000 are Jewish.
Okay, here's another question. why, with such historically rich remains, would it have been built upon all new architecture? It refers to what you were talking about in building new buildings over archaeology in the Jewish quarter.
Archaeology was not, don't think 21st century. It's only over the last 100 years that people start appreciating archaeology. Let me give you an example, which is somewhat tragic, but also humorous. When Napoleon's army comes into Egypt, you know what they started doing with the pyramids? Practice shooting with their cannonballs. And today you're like, are you serious? It didn't have meaning, archaeology, until really exploration starts a little over 100 years ago. The reuse of stones, of archaeological findings, is constant. We always see stones from one site that are used now in another site. I was just reading on the weekend Shabbat newspaper about how part of the stones from the Temple of the Southern Wall are actually today in the Christian quarter. They're part of another structure. So there simply wasn't, it didn't have the meaning that it has today. And B, people saw a lot of these things as something functional. Well, let's use it to build our buildings today.
Okay. Did archaeologists find skeletons of the thousands of corpses outside the Broad Wall?
No. The Romans were very good regarding hygiene and at burying the dead. And what was found inside what's known as the burn house. Remember, we went to the Herodian Quarter on the tour, so it's also connected to the burn house, the complex of homes from 2,000 years ago. They found, it's always shown on Zoom, I don't know which direction to turn ever, but you get the idea, the arm. You got the arm of a woman, a young woman who was in her 20s. It was next to the spear. If you remember the spear that I mentioned, so next to was the arm of a young woman who was apparently fighting against the Romans at that time. But it's rare to find skeletons. It's a question that I actually asked the person who ran my tour guide course, who's actually one of the top guides, Dr. Chagi Amitzur. I said to him, Chagi, Dr. Amitzur, if you don't know him, you speak this. How did they not find skeletons in the old city? He said to me, because it always insults, because the Romans were so hygienic. Why do you think they bury everybody? Okay. At the end of the day, they're very hygienic, and they bury the dead usually. So it's rare to find skeletons.
Okay, let's see what we'll take maybe one last question and invite everyone to join us for next week. So Daniel is asking, were the Jews that received the keys to homes after hundreds of years in the 15th century coming from Spain?
So they came from Spain. They didn't receive keys from homes. They basically came and they started. Let's make a little order over here, okay? The Jews returning to Jerusalem. What's going to happen is Jews are going to start returning. I gave a very quick overview. Excuse me for not getting into details. They're going to actually start returning before the expulsion from Spain in the 13th century. But when the Jews are going to move to the present-day Jewish quarters we know it today, they moved from right outside today's walls of the old city, from the area of David's tomb on Mount Zion, into today's Jewish quarter. That'll take place in the 15th century, as I mentioned before. And a lot of that is going to come from Jews who are expelled from Spain. And they're going to be right. They're not going to come with keys to their homes. They don't have their homes. they themselves never lived there. And it's not like, Jewish homes remained. Yes, this was a Jewish home over the years. Jerusalem was destroyed many times over, but the main population of Jews that will come to Jerusalem in the 15th century are Jews who are making their way from the Spanish expulsion to many places, amongst them Jerusalem.
Okay, we won't be able to answer all the questions. Ami's email was on the chat, so look for it at Ami Braun at Gmail, and he'll be happy to answer your questions.
Absolutely.
For those of you who asked, anyone who signed up for this webinar will be getting a link to the recording in a day or two once the link is up on our website. So if you missed anything, you want your friend or family to watch, you'll be getting the link, and you can also see it on our website if you look yourself in a few days once we upload it. And next week we'll all be traveling up north to Tveria, right?
Absolutely. It's going to be a fascinating tour for sure. Yep. Do you want me to say a couple of words?
Sure. Give us a teaser.
Teaser. Well, so basically we're going to be talking about both the history in ancient times and also through to today. We're going to do a lot of walking with Google Earth through the streets of Jerusalem, of Tveria, Tiberias and really getting a
Yeah.
full feel of it. Yeah. So looking forward.
Good. We'll hope for good weather next Sunday on the Kinneret, and sign up and join us. Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much.
Thank you.